Hi, you guys. My name is Rakaya, and I'm here to talk to you about Starbucks and where they get their coffee beans, such as globalization. Now, we all know Starbucks gets their coffee from many different places in the world, but I'm only going to talk about 7: Latin America, Italy, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Ethiopia, and Costa Rica. Now, all these places have in common they grow their crops from their country and they ship it off to Seattle and Washington. Now, Malaysia produces some of Asia's finest or best coffee. That's why Starbucks wants it. But some negatives to that is who's doing the work. It could be kids from the age of 4 to elderly at the age of 80. Or it could be a poor country. Some positives are cheap labor and fertile soil. Ethiopia. Ethiopia produces some of the world's finest coffee. But some negatives to that is who's doing the work. Is it a poor country? It's not close to America. But some positives are cheap labor, good coffee, gets good money, larger exported crop. Now here's a fact. Coffee is important to the economy of Ethiopia. Around 60% of foreign income comes from coffee, with an estimated 15 million of the population relies on some aspect of coffee produced in their livelihood. In 2006, coffee exports brought in $350 million. And Ethiopia's largest exported crop is coffee. China. Starbucks crops has this year brought coffee beans from China at its highest volume ever. China doesn't sell large amount of coffee beans. It doesn't rely on coffee beans like Ethiopia, but it does have good coffee and it's cheap sometimes. But some negatives are that is who's doing the work. Where in China is Starbucks getting their coffee beans from? And it's not really close to America. Now, as you can see, most of these negatives and positives are the same. Well, that's because this is globalization. Some things are going to be the same. And most of these questions rely for each country. Now, some positives are it has many natural resources, cheaper to grow, cheap labor. South America or Latin America's key sourcing was its key sourcing in 1971. Latin America has strong coffee, and that's why everyone likes it. And Starbucks is proud to source coffee mainly from Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Peru, and so on. So negatives to that is who's doing the work. Is it a poor country? Some positives is it's close to America, cheaper to ship, cheaper labor, people love the flavor, and it's 45% of the world's total coffee is exported from South America. Now that's a lot. It's not 50%, that's a lot. Costa Rica. Now, I know I talked about South America, and I know Costa Rica is in South America, but Costa Rica I want to talk a little bit more about it because that's like the biggest coffee exported area in South America. More than 300,000 pounds of coffee were harvested in the farm's first year under the guidance of Starbucks. Starbucks has been getting coffee beans from Costa Rica for 40 years. Now that's a long time. But some negatives are who's doing the work? Is it a poor country? And it's under the guidance of Starbucks. That means that the farming or the people are being controlled by Starbucks. Now that can be bad, but it can be good. But it's mostly bad because it's a negative. Some positives are it's close to America, and they have been doing it for a long time. Italy. Now, Italy is home of coffee. and they love their coffee. So they don't really, Italy doesn't really rely on their coffee like China, like Ethiopia does. Some negatives to that are Italy is home of the coffee and espresso. So they could, and it's not close to America. So positives are Italy and Starbucks share ideas. For example, cappuccino and espresso is from Italy. So they've been sharing ideas and it's cheaper labor. Indonesia. So Indonesia has a small island. So the small island is Sumatra. So the small island of Indonesia is the birthplace of Sumatra coffee. Produces and creates in a unique way, steeped in tradition and unreplied anywhere else in the world. Some negatives to that is who is doing the work? Is it a poor country? And it's not close to America. Some positives are cheap labor. No, that's it, you guys. That's it, you guys. I've told you everything you need to know about where Starbucks gets their coffee. But there's definitely more places, especially in South America. But I wanted to do Costa Rica because it's bigger than the other countries. And here are my sources. Thank you guys for listening.